Shumba tossed and turned in his restless sleep, his body drenched in sweat, his mind trapped in a nightmare that felt all too real. The darkness around him trembled with an unnatural energy, the very fabric of the world pulsating with power. In the distance, a fire burned, a golden inferno that did not consume but instead radiated an anger that could shake the heavens. From within the flames, Naraka emerged. The lion god's form was colossal, his golden mane crackling with embers, his eyes burning like twin suns. He was power incarnate, his very presence making the earth beneath Shumba tremble. Shumba dropped to one knee, his heart hammering in his chest. "Naraka," he whispered, his voice barely audible. The god did not speak at first. He merely stood there, towering over him, his aura suffocating with rage. Then, in a low growl that sent shivers down Shumba's spine, he spoke.
"Shumba."
The name rumbled through the space like a coming storm. Shumba kept his gaze lowered. He did not dare look into those eyes, not when they were filled with such fury. Naraka took a step forward, the ground cracking beneath his mighty paws. The fire in his eyes burned brighter.
"Do I take it you have failed your assignment?"
His voice was deceptively calm, but the weight behind it was unbearable. It was the voice of a god holding back a storm, a dam waiting to break. Shumba swallowed hard. "No, Naraka," he said quickly. "I have not failed. I just need more time." A deep growl rumbled from Naraka's chest, low and ominous. His tail flicked, sending sparks into the air.
"Time is not something that we have."
His voice hardened.
"Your son, Paka, does not have that luxury."
The words struck Shumba like a spear to the gut.
"Barbara will break him."
Shumba's breath hitched. He knew it was true. But the thought of Paka, his son, being crushed under their hands, being stripped of his spirit, made his blood run cold.
"I told you how important this assignment was. For me, for you, my people, for God."
You are watching the Tales of the Savannah. Subscribe and be part of the tribe. Now let's get back to the story.
God.
Shumba clenched his fists. "But Naraka, you are the one who told me to take Paka with me." A thick silence fell between them. The fire crackled, roaring louder for a moment before settling into a deadly quiet. Then Naraka moved. It was not a step. It was a shift in power, an invisible force pressing down on Shumba's soul.
"And when you took Paka with you,"
Naraka growled,
"what did you do? Did you guide him? Did you protect him?"
Shumba's breath caught. His head bowed lower. He knew. There was no arguing with Naraka, no excuse that would be accepted. He had failed his son. He had failed him. The silence stretched painfully long before Shumba finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "We're going again at dawn." He swallowed, forcing his throat to work. "We'll make sure we fix this." Naraka's golden eyes blazed. He stepped closer, so close that Shumba could feel the heat radiating from his mane.
"Make sure of it, Shumba."
His voice dropped to a guttural snarl, shaking the very air.
"I cannot allow failure."
Shumba's breath was shallow, his chest tight.
"I cannot disappoint God."
The words struck Shumba like a hammer, each syllable searing into his mind.
"Do you hear me?"
Shumba nodded furiously, bowing lower, his body trembling. "I hear you, my lord." A final growl rumbled through the space, the last warning before the flames exploded, blinding, searing, consuming everything. And then he woke. Shumba bolted upright, his chest heaving. His hands shook as he ran them over his face, his heart still racing. The air in his hut was thick with the remnants of the dream, the echoes of Naraka's fury still clinging to his skin. He had no time left. It was already dawn. Today they would bring Paka home, or die trying. Paka awoke to the cold, the damp walls of his stone prison pressing in around him. His body was battered, his back felt raw, stripped of flesh, and each breath sent ripples of pain through his ribs. For a moment, he lay there, staring at the cracks in the cave ceiling, his mind trying to remember how he got here. And then, like a hammer to the chest, it all came back. The whip, the pain, the darkness. He had blacked out after Mogo's brutal lashings, his body giving out before his will. But now he was awake, and now he knew if he stayed here, he would die. Paka tried to sit up, his muscles screaming in protest. The silence of the camp was eerie. It was the early hours of the morning, and nothing stirred. Through a small crack in the wall of the cave, he peered outside. The guards at the entrance were barely alert. One was asleep, the other lazily rubbing his eyes, exhaustion weighing heavy on both. Paka's heart pounded. This is it. This is my chance. But his body was failing him. His hands clenched into fists, his nails digging into his palms. He needed strength, but there was nothing in this cave that he could use, nothing to turn into a weapon. He was the weapon. He had to find the lion inside of him, but his body felt broken. Paka fell to his knees, his breathing shallow. He had nothing left, except one thing: faith. With trembling lips, he called out to the only god he knew. "Naraka, help me." His voice was weak, but it carried desperation, devotion, and fire. They say that gods do not act unless their power is called upon. And Naraka was listening. A slow, knowing smile formed on the lion god's lips. Finally, the boy understands. A jolt of power coursed through Paka's veins, like wildfire, like lightning striking the earth. It surged through every inch of his broken body, pulling him upright, filling his lungs with raw energy. It was intoxicating. The pain faded into nothingness. His mind sharpened, his senses expanded. And then, he was no longer in pain. Before he even realized it, he was standing on all fours. The transformation was seamless, natural. He was a lion, big, strong, powerful. His first instinct was to roar, to announce his rebirth, but he suppressed it. He had to be quiet. His golden eyes locked onto the two guards at the cave entrance. They were weak, tired, unprepared. He moved forward, each step calculated, each muscle under perfect control. He was silent, a true jungle cat. The first guard, barely awake, never saw it coming. With one precise swipe of his claw, Paka took him down before he could even gasp. The other, still asleep, met the same fate. Quick, efficient, deadly. Paka did not wait. He had to move. The camp was littered with sleeping apes, their loud snores filling the air. He could hear their breath, feel their presence. He had to pass through them all. One mistake, and he was dead. He moved slowly, his paws barely touching the ground. His breathing was shallow, controlled. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but he forced himself to be still, be patient. Step by step, breath by breath, he was almost out. Then, it happened. His paw brushed against the fur of a sleeping ape. The ape shifted, grunted, stirred. Paka froze. His heart pounded in his ears as the ape's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, an endless moment, they stared at each other. The ape blinked, confusion turning into realization. Then, it screamed. The camp exploded into chaos. Apes scrambled awake, drunk with sleep but enraged. They stumbled to their feet, grabbing weapons, surrounding him. Paka did not wait. He ran. His legs carried him forward, leaping over logs, dodging spears hurled his way. He was fast, but they were many. At the gates, a massive ape stood in his way, too big to fight, too strong to dodge. Paka did not stop. He leaped at the beast, claws flashing. One clean swipe and the ape fell, gurgling on its own blood. But there were too many. Before he could move, they had him, surrounded. The apes closed in. The circle around him tightened. Paka fought. He slashed, he roared, his fury unmatched. But for every ape he cut down, another took its place. The battle was endless, a river of bodies coming at him with no end in sight. He knew then, this was it. He would not win, but he would fight until his last breath. Then, it happened. A thunderous sound shook the ground beneath them. The apes froze. The air became thick with something unseen. And then, Paka saw them, flaming eyes. From the distance, the golden glow of his people pierced the darkness. Paka knew his father had come for him. Emotions surged through his chest, almost overwhelming him. He wanted to collapse, He wanted to cry. The apes turned, panic in their ranks. They had been caught off guard. And then Shumba roared. The lions descended upon them with fury unmatched. The apes were not ready. Barbara emerged from his chambers, his face a mask of confusion. He stepped outside, his eyes widening as he saw the battlefield in chaos. The stronghold was falling. His domain was burning. With trembling rage, he shouted, "Retreat!" His warriors scrambled, leaping into the trees, fleeing for their lives. Barbara stood still for a moment, watching it all collapse around him. Then he locked eyes with Shumba, his rival, his enemy. Shumba took a step forward, murder in his eyes. Barbara smirked. "Not today, Shumba." And with that, he vanished into the jungle. Silence fell over the battlefield. The war was won, for now. Paka turned, his vision blurring as he met his father's gaze. "Looking for me, father," Paka rasped. Shumba exhaled. "I see there was no need to come for you. You were already taking care of things." Paka smiled weakly. If Shumba had not come, this would have been his last day. Shumba stepped forward, his voice softer. "Besides, your mother could not shut up about you." Paka let out a breathless laugh. He knew Leona would never stop until she got him back. And then, for the first time in his life, Shumba hugged his son. Paka broke. He collapsed into his father's arms, weeping. All the rage, all the pain. It was gone. In his father's arms for the first time in so long, he felt safe. Kitapo sat beneath the great tree, lost in thought. The idea of meeting her mother had consumed her for days, yet now, as she waited, reality felt distant, like a dream she wasn't quite sure she had woken up from. Then, a voice, soft, shaky. "Kitapo?" She stiffened, startled. Turning slowly, her eyes met the woman standing before her. Akina. Kitapo's breath hitched. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but now that it was here, she didn't know what to do. What was she supposed to call her? Mother. She didn't speak. She just stared. Akina stared back, studying her, memorizing her. She was beautiful, so much like Lulenga, yet there was something familiar in her features, something that belonged to her. "Hi," Akina said at last, her voice trembling. Kitapo didn't reply. Akina felt her chest tighten. She had spent years wondering what her daughter would look like, what she would be like. Would she be a creature of the sea like her father, or just a girl? She was just a girl. "Can I sit with you?" Akina asked gently. Kitapo hesitated, then nodded. She wanted to speak, but her voice refused to work. Her mind was too busy absorbing every detail of this woman, her mother. The way she moved, the way she held herself, the way her voice wavered slightly as if she too was unsure how to handle this moment. Akina lowered herself onto the ground beside her, smoothing her dress nervously. "Wow," she exhaled. "You're so grown up." Kitapo smiled. A small, hesitant smile. Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, but fragile, like glass that would shatter with the wrong words. Then, Kitapo finally spoke. "I'm glad you came. Mother." The word hung in the air, heavy, real. Akina's breath caught, her hands trembling as she reached for Kitapo's fingers, barely touching them before pulling back. She wanted to say she had searched for her, wanted to tell her how many years she had stood by the river, whispering prayers into the water, begging for her return. But she didn't know how much Kitapo knew. She hesitated. Kitapo's eyes flickered with understanding. "I know my father took me away from you," she said softly, a sad smile on her lips. "He told me everything." Akina gasped, her heart cracking. Tears welled in her eyes as she let out a shaky breath. Then she did what she had longed to do for years. She pulled Kitapo into her arms. Kitapo stiffened at first, the sensation foreign to her. But then she heard it, the steady rhythm of Akina's heartbeat. She felt the strength in her embrace. She felt loved. For the first time, she felt what it was like to be held by a mother. Tears streamed down both their faces, but neither spoke. There were no words needed. Akina began to hum, a soft, familiar tune, one she used to sing to Chipo when she was little. The melody floated through the air, weaving around them like a spell. Kitapo listened, closing her eyes. She leaned into her mother's arms, feeling the rise and fall of her breath. She could stay like this forever. Akina rocked her gently, just as she would have if she had been given the chance to raise her. This moment was enough. For now. Lulenga watched from a few steps away, his throat tight, his vision blurred with unshed tears. He had expected this meeting to be filled with questions, anger, confrontation. But instead, it was this, raw, intimate, beautiful. He had robbed them of this bond. He had convinced himself it was for the best, that he had been protecting them both. But he had only been protecting himself. He had been selfish. And now, watching Akina cradle Kitapo, watching them heal in ways he could never give them, he knew that. Time moved too fast, and before long, the moment had to end. Lulenga inhaled deeply and stepped forward. "We have to go, Kitapo," he said softly, though it hurt to say it. Kitapo stirred but didn't let go of Akina. "5 more minutes, please, father." "I need to speak to your mother." Akina's body tensed at these words. "Your mother." Kitapo turned back to her. "Will I see you again?" Akina swallowed the lump in her throat. "Yes," she whispered. "We have much to talk about." She reached up, wiping the tears from her daughter's face. Kitapo smiled through the sadness, through the overwhelming emotions. She had played out so many different scenarios in her mind of how this would go. But this was perfect. Akina kissed her forehead, squeezing her one last time before Kitapo stood up. She walked a small distance away, giving Lulenga space to speak with Akina. Lulenga turned to Akina. He reached down, offering his hand to help her up. She hesitated before taking it, allowing him to pull her to her feet. For a moment, his grip lingered, firm, steady, lingering on her back in a way that made her heart twist. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice quiet but firm. "I was just helping you up," he said. "Lulenga, not this again, not in front of her," she warned, pulling her hand away. He let go. A beat of silence passed. Then, "Can I visit your dreams tonight?" he asked. His voice was low, intimate. Akina's breath hitched. She took a step back. "No, Lulenga," she whispered. "Please don't. It's been a long day." And with that, she turned and walked away. Lulenga stood there. The air was thick with the weight of unsaid words, of unfinished moments. Tomorrow at dawn, he would leave, leading his people into war. And maybe, just maybe, this would be the last time he ever saw her. He wanted to tell her goodbye, wanted to tell her everything, how much he had missed her, how much he regretted the time lost, how he wished he had given Kitapo her mother sooner, but she had already gone. She had denied him access to her dreams, so he had nothing left to do but walk away. At least she had met Kitapo. That was something. That was a gift. And now he was a warrior again. No longer a father, no longer a man burdened with past mistakes, just a leader preparing for battle. If he didn't make it back, would she remember him? Would his name be spoken with pride or regret? He let out a slow breath, watching the water ripple at his feet. The alliances were secure. Ziva had gone and rallied troops. There was no longer a need to marry off Kitapo. For now, at least, she was free. That was another burden lifted. And if Lulenga did not make it back home, then so be it. It no longer mattered that he had no heir. Life had a way of sorting itself out. As he walked along the riverbank, his mind drifted to his choices, his failures. None of it mattered anymore, not when war was on the horizon. Lulenga straightened his shoulders, his face hardening. The past was behind him. Now he had only one responsibility: to fight and win. Jabali and Chipo had been crouched in the bushes for what felt like an eternity. They were certain Akina was coming to the river. She had to be. But the sun had shifted in the sky, and there was still no sign of her. Jabali frowned. Something wasn't right. And then he felt it. It started as a mild irritation, a tickling sensation down his back. He shifted uncomfortably, thinking it was just a bug. Then the tickle turned into fire. His skin burned, an intense itch spreading across his entire back like an uncontrollable wildfire. His fingers shot to the affected area, scratching furiously, until he felt it. Blisters. His eyes widened. Oh no. No, no, no. It was then that Chipo too felt a familiar tingling sensation creeping down her spine. At first she thought it was nerves. Maybe her guilty conscience for sneaking around was finally catching up to her. But then the tingling turned into an unbearable itch. She turned her head and caught sight of something that made her stomach drop. Poison ivy, and she had been sitting right in the middle of it. Chipo launched herself out of the bushes like she'd just been stung by a swarm of bees, scratching wildly at her back. Jabali, still lost in his mission to catch Akina, was scratching but still rooted in place until he saw his daughter hopping from foot to foot, arms flailing like a mad woman. Ouch! Ouch! Chipo screamed out, her voice high-pitched with panic. Jabali, still mid-scratch, turned his burning gaze to her. Chipo, what are you doing here? He asked, barely holding in his discomfort. Chipo's jaw dropped. I could ask you the same thing. Both of them stood there, scratching furiously, realization dawning upon them. They had both been tricked. Well, Chipo started, trying to regain her composure, I was here to fetch water. Jabali arched an eyebrow, his lips twitching. Same as myself. Chipo crossed her arms. Where's your clay pot? Jabali smirked. I could ask the same of you, Chipo. A long pause. And then, against all odds, they both broke into laughter. Painful, itchy, breathless laughter. Neither wanted to admit the truth. Neither wanted to reveal why they were really there. And so, without another word, father and daughter walked back home, side by side, scratching like two flea-ridden goats. By the time they reached home, Akina was already in the kitchen, stirring a pot, the aroma of roasted yams and spiced stew filling the air. She turned when she heard them enter. Ah, Jabali, Chipo, where have you two been? The two itchy culprits froze, still clawing at their backs. Akina's eyes narrowed as she noticed their frantic scratching. Jabali coughed, trying to act normal. Nowhere important. Just walking, Chipo added, avoiding her mother's gaze. Akina's brow furrowed. Walking? Like that? She eyed them suspiciously. Why are you both scratching like that? Jabali waved a hand dismissively. Oh, nothing serious. Yeah, Chipo chimed in. Nothing at all. Akina folded her arms. Come closer. Father and daughter stiffened. Closer, she repeated, her voice serious. Defeated, they obeyed. Akina gasped. Their bodies were covered in angry red blisters, spreading across their skin like an artist's worst masterpiece. She sighed, shaking her head. Have you been near the river? This looks exactly like poison ivy. No, they both shouted, too quickly, too forcefully. Akina smirked, her knowing gaze darting between the two of them. Okay, she said, her voice dripping with amusement, if you say so. She turned back to her pot, stirring slowly, savoring the moment. Go and lie on your stomachs, she instructed. I'll bring some ointment. This will take a few days to heal, so you better get comfortable. Jabali and Chipo groaned, dragging their feet toward their sleeping mats. That night, after much grumbling and an uncomfortable amount of anti-itch potions, Akina gave them a bitter herbal drink to ease their discomfort. And for the first time that evening, the house fell silent as exhaustion pulled them all into sleep. As Akina drifted into slumber, she replayed the day in her mind. Not the itching, not the deception, but Kitapo, her daughter. She tried to hold onto her face, her smile, the warmth of her touch. A soft smile spread across Akina's lips. She had found her, she had held her, and no matter what came next, that was enough. For now. The ocean trembled with the tension of an impending war. The merfolk had gathered in full force, their weapons shimmering under the bioluminescent glow of the deep. They were warriors of the sea, ready to fight for their waters, their birthright. Among them, Dziva stood tall, speaking in hushed tones with Lulenga, his trusted friend. But their conversation was not of battle strategies or war cries. "You don't know what I gave for this war," Dziva muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. "You should be thanking me, my friend." Lulenga chuckled, arms crossed. "Oh? And what exactly did you give?" Dziva exhaled, glancing around before lowering his voice. "Where do I even start?" He leaned in, recounting his night with Mami Wata, his words laced with both reverence and fear. His body tensed as he felt the shift in the water. Slowly, he turned his head. "Mami Wata." He inhaled sharply. "Please, Lulenga, hide me." Lulenga frowned. "What are you talking about?" Before he could get an answer, she was upon them. Mami Wata moved with a slow, deliberate grace, her presence as suffocating as it was alluring. Her mermaids flanked her like an army of sirens, but she was the true danger. She turned to Lulenga first, her full lips curving into a slow smile. "Lulenga?" She dragged his name out, her voice smooth as silk. "Always a pleasure to see you." Lulenga, ever the composed one, gave a respectful nod. "The pleasure is mine, Mami Wata." Her gaze flickered back to Dziva, then back to Lulenga. "How come you've never visited me?" She tilted her head, her expression curious. "I extended an invitation when you became king." Lulenga sighed. "Much has happened. I had my child. She kept me busy." He paused, meeting her gaze. "She's older now. Maybe I will visit you, Mami Wata." Her lips curled. "I look forward to it," she murmured. Then her attention snapped back to Dziva, her eyes drinking him in. "It's good to see you, Dziva." Dziva swallowed hard, mumbling something under his breath, looking anywhere but at her. Lulenga's brows furrowed as he glanced at his friend. What was this? He had never seen Dziva, the bold, fearless warrior, reduced to this. "What did you say?" Mami Wata's voice was low, sultry. Dziva straightened, forcing composure back into his stance. "It's good to see you too," he said firmly. Her eyes lingered on him, a slow, deliberate scan from head to tail. "Have you been a bad boy since we last saw each other?" she asked, her voice thick with amusement, swimming closer. "No," he said quickly. "Did I punish you too much last time? Did I break you?" Dziva flinched, a phantom ache rippling down his spine. "No," he admitted. "It was just enough." Her lips twitched. "Good," she whispered. She circled him, slow and predatory, the water humming with unspoken tension. "A man of your wildness must be kept in check," she murmured. "You need to be punished." Dziva's throat went dry. He didn't disagree. "Yes, Mummy," he said, voice lower now. "I did need that. It was much needed." She smiled, pleased. "After this battle, after this inconvenience, would you indulge me with a drink?" Her voice dipped, sultry and promising. "Just the two of us. I promise I'll be gentle." Dziva swallowed, his resolve hanging by a thread. "As you wish, my queen." He bowed. Mami Wata gave Lulenga one last glance before she swam away, leaving the water thrumming in her wake. Lulenga turned to Dziva, utterly perplexed. "What the hell was that?" Lulenga laughed, shaking his head. "I thought you swore never to see her again." "My body is weak," Dziva admitted, rubbing his temples. "Maybe you are stronger than I am, but—" He trailed off, lost in thought. There was something about Mami Wata, a force that drew him in even when he knew better. He had once fled from her grasp, thinking himself free. But now he understood. He wanted it. Her pull was intoxicating, her punishment a craving he could not explain. He feared her, but the taste of that fear in his mouth was addictive. "You'll never understand, Lulenga," he muttered, shaking his head. Before Lulenga could press further, Kwame approached, his expression serious. He nodded in greeting to Lulenga, showing the customary respect, before turning his full attention to Dziva. "Dziva, I bring a message from the Snake Queen." Dziva straightened, his pulse quickening just slightly. "Yes?" he asked, expectation lacing his tone. Kwame's lips curled into the smallest of smirks, as if he knew the weight of the words he was about to deliver. "If you survive this war," he said, "she will have a deep discussion with you." A slow grin stretched across Dziva's face. Lulenga, watching the exchange, raised a brow. This was interesting. Kwame bowed and departed. Lulenga folded his arms. "The Snake Queen," he said, his voice laced with curiosity. "What does she want with you?" Dziva smiled. "You and the Snake Queen as well." Dziva turned to him, an almost dreamy look in his eyes. "I like her," he admitted. "She's different. Who knows? Maybe I'm onto something here." Lulenga stared, utterly baffled. "And what about Mami Wata?" Dziva shot him a pointed look, his smirk returning. "Don't complicate things, Lulenga. There is enough of me to go around," he said, laughing as he swam away. Lulenga let out a short laugh, watching his friend take his place at the front of the troops. The ocean was alive with the weight of battle. Warriors from all across the sea had gathered, a force unlike any the deep had seen in generations. The merfolk stood ready, their tridents gleaming under the bioluminescent glow of the deep. Lulenga's people, warriors of the dark depths, their scales reflecting a muted obsidian shine, carried weapons forged from the bones of ancient leviathans. The snake people, foreign to these waters, moved with a quiet deadliness, their presence a reminder that alliances were bound not by blood, but by purpose. And then there were the sirens of Mami Wata, ethereal and otherworldly, their haunting beauty masking a viciousness that sent shivers through even the bravest of men. They had come together for a single cause, to stop the fish people before they pillaged another village, before they claimed the sea as their own. Dziva stood in front, his warriors circling him, eyes filled with fire and purpose. The ocean held its breath. He turned, looking into the faces of those who had come to fight. His voice, when it came, was steady, strong, powerful. "Warriors of the sea, hear me. For centuries, the sea has been our home. It has raised us, shaped us, and given us life. And now our enemies seek to take it from us. The fish people do not come with offers of peace. They do not come seeking balance. They come to pillage, to conquer, to drown out everything we are. They believe we will kneel, that we will let them take what is ours without a fight." His voice rose, cutting through the water like a blade. "But they are wrong. They have no idea what awaits them. Look around you." He gestured to them all. "Look at your brothers, your sisters, your allies. Look at the warriors standing beside you, ready to spill blood for the depths we call home. We come from different kingdoms, different waters, but today we are one. One army, one force, one rage. Do you feel it?" His fists clenched. "That fire in your chest, that hunger in your bones, that is not fear. It is the call to war. It is the call of our ancestors, of those who fought before us, telling us to stand tall and strike hard. We do not run. We do not break. We do not surrender." He turned, locking eyes with Lulenga, then Mami Wata, then the snake people. "Tonight, the fish people will know who we are. They will know what it means to challenge the kings and queens of these waters. They will know that they have awoken a force far greater than they could ever imagine. And when their blood stains the currents, when their cries are lost to the waves, they will understand." His voice dropped, low and deadly. "We are the sea. We are the storm. And we will never be conquered." The warriors roared in response, the sound crashing through the depths like a tidal wave. Tridents were raised, weapons were drawn, the battle was coming, and then a shift. The horizon darkened. A massive cloud of shadows moved toward them, the unmistakable presence of the fish people advancing. Their war cries rippled through the water, a chilling promise of destruction. They came in numbers, hundreds, thousands. The time for words had ended. The war had begun. And that, my dear tribe, brings us to the end of another thrilling episode in our Mermaids, Lions and Witches series. I hope you enjoyed this week's adventure as much as I did. Paka, in his moment of desperation, cried out to Naraka, the mighty lion god, and was granted renewed strength. But escaping the apes was no easy feat. Had his people not arrived just in time, his fate might have been sealed. Meanwhile, elsewhere in our tale, Akina finally reunites with Kitapo in an emotional and tender moment, one that both mother and daughter desperately needed. But not all is peaceful. Jabali and Chipo, in their attempt to hide, stumble into a patch of poison ivy, suffering the blisters of their lives, much to Akina's amusement. And now the stage is set for an epic battle. The Mer people have gathered, preparing to defend their home and legacy. Ziva, Lulenga, Mami Wata, and the snake people stand united, ready to face the fish people in what promises to be a clash for the ages. As you know, we always end the season with a battle, so the next episode will mark the grand finale of this season. Have you enjoyed the journey so far? What were your favorite moments? I'd love to hear your highlights, so let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and get ready, because the final showdown is just around the corner. Until then, stay wild, stay curious, and stay ready for what's to come. A huge shout out to @RickyBrown6764 for an incredible idea that shaped how Paka's story unfolded in this episode. They suggested that in a moment of despair and exhaustion, Paka should call upon Naraka, the mighty lion god, for strength. In a surge of power, he transforms back into his lion form, breaking free and eliminating the apes that held him hostage. And just when it seemed the battle wasn't over, Shumba and the other lions return in the nick of time, fighting alongside him to completely wipe out their enemies. What a brilliant addition to the story. I love when you, my dear tribe members, share your thoughts and ideas. It makes this journey even more exciting. While I don't always agree with every take, they're always worth reading and add depth to the conversation. So, if you have intriguing ideas about where the story should go next, don't hesitate to share. Your creativity fuels this adventure, and I appreciate each and every one of you. And once again, thank you @RickyBrown6764 for your fantastic contribution to this week's episode. Speaking of this week's contributions, a huge shout out to @LiftingYourVeilLove for your super thanks. Your message had me laughing. You said you almost threw your phone when the episode ended. Now that's the kind of reaction that tells me the story is hitting just right. I truly appreciate your support, and may the gods you hold dear bless you abundantly. Thank you for being part of this journey. Want to support the channel and become an even bigger part of our tribe? You can join for as little as the cost of a coffee each month. Your support helps me continue creating the content you love, but of course, just having you here is already more than enough. Thank you for being part of this journey. To those of you who have already joined the tribe, thank you from the bottom of my heart. You are truly the heartbeat of this channel. And as always, thank you for watching our story, and we hope you enjoyed it. What lessons did you draw from this story? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and be part of the tribe. Thank you for watching The Tales of the Savannah. We will see you next time in the Savannah.